So, I had a really great comment to do a nezuko. Okay. Um, a nezuko. So, all the what ifs that are out now, including the top one, I've wanted to do. So now I'm going to be doing the what ifs you guys want to do. So, like this one, which is the nezuko. And then someone else wanted an OP Asta, and I might do that, even though Asta's kind of already overpowered because he's anti-magic, and when he goes into the half-demon state, he's immune to magic. But, okay. So from what I read on my very little research of Nezuko, this is going to be a part 0, by the way, just telling you a little bit of the backstory and how Nezuko awakened her quirk, which this is going to be considered a quirk, and the ranking system for quirks. It's a ranking system that shows the complication of the quirk and the complexity of the quirk and the power of the quirk. The more complex, the lower the rating, the more powerful, the higher the rating. So, Nezuko is a a tall woman for her age. And when and she's lived a happy life in the mountains with her entire family of 7 brothers and sisters and 1 mother. Because, yes, I'm still going with the story of their father died before where the anime started. And the legend is where they live, there's demons running around at night. So everybody's like, okay, doors shut and inside at night. And I'm sorry for you guys who love the character Tanjiro, but something's bad gonna happen to him. So Tanjiro still goes down and sells charcoal and helps out the town, but there's no man stopping him from going all the way up. And there are 12 at this time. So, and yes, it's still going to be Nezuko and Tanjiro. Nezuko is not going to have a last name because I honestly can't say her last name, and I'm too lazy to go to translate and find what it says. But Tanjiro still continues, and Nezuko is currently bathing. And her brothers and sisters are waiting for Tanjiro. They're waiting outside of the house for Tanjiro. And the rule is you must be inside the house before sundown. And the doors must be shut. So when Nezuko gets out of the bathroom, per se, because they still have the traditional Japanese style home where they have to have a wooden bathtub. They're disconnected from technology. They don't know what their father's quirk is, and they don't know what their mother's quirk is. Because they never use their quirk, and they never talk about it. So, Tanjiro gets there and sees everybody killed, and he sees that Nezuko is still breathing because she just got out of the bath and is beckoning them inside. And a villain appeared and just wanted to kill them. He just wanted to kill people. So the villain started slaughtering them, but didn't slaughter Nezuko. He just severely injured Nezuko. And the entire family doesn't use their quirks because they don't know their quirks, and they don't know how to activate their quirks. So Tanjiro starts running Nezuko down the mountain, and Nezuko starts going berserk. Her quirk activates in her, and the power makes her go berserk because she saw her entire family get slaughtered. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I had to wait for a timer. But, so, let's get back to the story. So, Tanjiro is running down the mountain, and a vigilante who claims to be killing demons. He's known as a vigilante that claims to be killing demons up in the mountains. Sees Tanjiro and Nezuko, and sees Nezuko's quirk going berserk. And sees that she has a horn on her head, and he thinks, oh, that's a demon. So he starts trying to kill Nezuko, and Tanjiro keeps protecting her. And Nezuko sees that Tanjiro is knocked out, severely knocked out. So she calms down a little bit, but is still severely pissed off that her family is getting killed right in front of her. So she's still somewhat in a berserk state, but she knows who to fight instead of just fight everybody. Like in the anime, she went from just wanting blood and flesh to, okay, he good, he bad. Like that. So Nezuko starts attacking the vigilante. And the vigilante has been in so many fights that he has muscle memory, and muscle memory is when you do so repetitively that you can close your eyes and your body does it by itself. But where you're where he's just fighting her and winning, but then she gets more furious because she knows she's losing and she wants to protect the last family she has, and activates her pyrokinesis on his sword. His sword catches on fire. And this shocked the swordsman a little, so he hesitated, and Nezuko, without noticing, quickly slashed at his neck and decapitated him. Then, luckily enough, Aizawa was chasing that vigilante around and saw Nezuko decapitate him. So he uses his quirk to deactivate her quirk. So she passes out. So he calls other heroes to come and help secure the scene, while he takes to what he thinks one is a civilian, and he knows the other one's a vigilante, and the third one uh, to get healed and then immediately have a quirk collar put on her. But when he deactivates his quirk, thinking that, oh, she's just asleep because of her quirk's adrenaline, her body shrinks. She shrinks to the size of a child. And she shrank, then she looked like she was so peaceful. He's like, I can just let her sleep. But then he took a second look around on her, and he saw a few scratches from the sword just instantly healing. And he's like, never mind, I need to find a quirk canceling color immediately. So he takes her straight to UA, which is like a 10-20 minute drive. No, 45 minute to an hour drive. And when she wakes up, she's in a white room, and all she sees is a door. She walks up to the door and knocks. And she looks around again and sees Tanjiro isn't there. So she knocks again, this time in a panicked state. And then she keeps knocking rapidly until finally Nezu walks in and asks, who is she? And tries to get her to calm down. But all she keeps asking is, where's Tanjiro? Where's Tanjiro? Where's Tanjiro? And Nezu asks, who's Tanjiro? And Nezuko says, my brother, the one who I was protecting on the mountain. And Nezu's eyes widen, thinking, oh, that kid with the scar. He says, he's currently safe in a hospital. If you answer a few of our questions, we can take you to him. At this point, Aizawa has walked in, and he's standing behind Nezu, ready to activate his quirk at any moment. Because there has been occasions where the person's triple S rated quirk completely destroys the quirk canceling color. But from the rating that the quirk doctor gave, said that her quirk was A. The quirk canceling color is rated up to an S rank. E is when it's super complex to activate and super weak. It goes from E to triple S. So that's the scaling. If anybody knows Don Monchi power scaling, that's the scaling. So, so she's still in somewhat of a panicked mood, but Nezu calmly asks, what is her name and what is her quirk? She says, my name is Nezuko, and what her last name is. And Aizawa's eyes widen, realizing who she is. He whispers into Nezu's ear, saying she's not a threat. We better take her to Tanjiro, or she will be a threat. Because there's been stories of a family who has a quirk that's closely related to the old ancient demons that used to wander the mountain. And there used to be a hero that came from the mountains that had a demon quirk and had a family in the mountains. That was all a legend, though. Only a few pro heroes actually knew it was true. Eraserhead was one of them. So Nezu shakes his head, or nods his head, yes, and they release the quirk canceling color. And Nezuko immediately shrinks to child Nezuko. What you see in the picture. But she doesn't have the bamboo um, a piece in her mouth. That's going to come later. But so she's in child form, and she's taken to Tanjiro, who now has a scar on the left side of his head, left top side of his head. And Tanjiro doesn't remember anything. He's basically a vegetable. I'm sorry. I know this is bad for Tanjiro, but he got hit in the head really hard by that vigilante and by Nezuko. And no, he does not have his iron skull from the anime. So he is basically rendered catatonic from both those hits to the head. So when she gets there, she immediately runs to Tanjiro, and he's in a coma right now. She tries to wake him up, and she starts crying, and Aizawa stops Nezu at the door, saying, "Don't go in there. It could be very bad." Because I really hate to do this, but Aizawa says that this particular quirk type can be very dangerous if the user is in an emotional state. I'm going to say there's 3 different quirk types: base quirk type, changing quirk type, and quirk evolution type. So the quirk evolution type basically explains itself. The quirk evolves depending on what the user is doing and what the user is. So Mina's is just the normal quirk form, and hers is rated uh, B. Hers is rated B, because the more she uses her acid, the more potent it becomes, and the more resistant to acid she is. So it slowly upgrades itself, and I'd have to say Bakugo's is an S rated. Yeah, Bakugo's is an S rated. I'll tell you when we meet the other people for the other quirk types. But they're currently 12, and Nezuko looks like she's 6. So Aizawa says to Nezu, he says, we need to enroll her in UA after we get her age. And Nezu immediately agrees, because once Aizawa said this quirk type, he knew exactly what he was dealing with. So now that they're on the same page, Aizawa walks into the room very slowly and very calmly and says, Nezuko, do you know where you live? And she goes, yes, Mount Fuji. And he goes, okay. And then he calmly says, in a smooth tone, do you have any other family? And she shrinks into a small 2-year-old and starts crying in the corner. And Aizawa immediately walks over to her in a calm way, saying, "It's okay, everything will be alright." The fatherly instinct that some males have took over in him, and he comforted con, conf, comforted her. Nah, don't know why that was so hard to say. Comforted her. So now, I pulled the cord. So now, yes, I have a headset on to talk to you guys. But now, she's slowly crying herself to sleep, and Aizawa sees this and tells Nezu he's gonna stay here with her for when she wakes up. And Nezu goes, "Okay, I'll get the papers ready to enroll her." 3 hours later, she wakes up and she's in what looks like a cocoon. And she sees Aizawa sleeping on the floor. She starts unzipping the cocoon, and Aizawa wakes up and says, "You're finally awake." Sorry, the Skyrim meme. "You're finally awake." And she nods. She has the comprehension of a adult, but she has the form of a 4-year-old right now. And Aizawa says, "How old are you?" And her mentally thinking, "Oh, I'm 4." But she comprehends everything like a 18-year-old. So she sticks up 4 fingers, and Aizawa is questioning this. So he pats her head, saying, "This might be a little scary, but I want you to bear with me for a second." He activates his quirk on her. She grows to where she's around, where she looks around 12, and he asks again, "How old are you?" And then she talks. "Oh, I'm 12 and a half." And then he deactivates his quirk, and he shrinks back down to where she thinks she's 4. Then she jumps on the bed with Tanjiro and attempts to fall asleep. And Aizawa says, "I have a deal for you." And she looks at him, and he goes, "I will do everything in my power to help wake up your brother, because he's sleeping right now, and he's going to be asleep for a really long time. I'll do everything in my power to wake him up as fast as possible if you go to school." And she quickly nods her head, going, "I'll do anything to wake up my brother." And Aizawa says, "Okay, for you to go to school, you will have to go to UA." And she's a child, she's in a child mindset right now, but she comprehends everything. So she asks, "What is UA?" And Aizawa says, "It's a school for heroes. So you can protect other people, so people don't have to go through what you and your brother had to go through." And she starts tearing up a little, remembering her brothers and sisters that were slaughtered. And then she grows to the size of an 18-year-old with with glowing eyes and a horn, and she looks pissed off. And Aizawa immediately activates his quirk, and she calms down. And he notes, "Don't mention family." So he then says, "I will be taking you to UA in 2 days. But tomorrow, you're going to a specialist to find out what your quirk is. Oh, sneeze. Oh, I freaking hate sneezes. But then she nods her head, going, okay. So the next day, Aizawa walks into the room and says, are you ready? And she's currently in the 4-year-old state and shakes her head yes. And he goes, okay, follow me. The room next door of Tanjiro's, the doctor is setting up currently. And she walks in and he says hi to her. She waves her hand. And the doctor says, I thought you said I was checking on a 12-and-a-half-year-old. And he says, she is. And he leans down and says, this may be a little scary at first. So he activates his eyes, and she grows to where she's 12 and a half. And she says, hi, doctor. So you're checking my quirk? And the doctor's eyes widen, going, oh crap, this has got to be a really good quirk if it can do that. And I'm going to name this quirk something that most people won't think of when they think of Nezuko. But the doctor says, yes, I'm ready. So Aizawa deactivates his quirk, and she shrinks back down to a 4-year-old because she prefers being in a 4-year-old's body, where she understands everything like an 18-year-old, but her emotions haven't developed, so she still acts like a 4-year-old. And the doctor kites her, or not kites her, yeah, kites her like she was a 4-year-old into the tests, and he comes up with, hold on, pyrokinesis. Ignore the sunlight strength, but the pyrokinesis, demonic transformation, power growth, immense regeneration, size manipulation, power restoration, and enhanced strength are her abilities. When she's in the 4-year-old state, she has enhanced strength and power regeneration and size manipulation. But when she's in her demonic state, her 18-year-old with the horn, she has power growth, immense regeneration, size manipulation, and pyrokinesis. So, and it's going to evolve to where I add a few more because I want an overpowered Nezuko. Because Nezuko cool. My favorite character in Demon Slayer is Nezuko. I just honestly think she's the best. So, what was it? So the doctor tells Aizawa her abilities, and she overheard it and understands the words like an 18-year-old, but comprehends it like a 4-year-old. So she's asking questions on if she can do this, 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 and this. And the doctor says, you also have a very special quirk, and your quirk can change depending on your situation. And her eyes light up and she asks, can I protect more people, especially people like my brother? And the doctor looks at Aizawa for the answer, and Aizawa just says, "Shake your head yes." So the doctor looks back at Nezuko and shakes his head yes. Because the doctor didn't know she had a brother. All Aizawa told him was, if she asks a yes or no question, let me answer it. And don't bring up family. So the next day rolls around, and Aizawa has already filled his class in of they are having a very special guest, and the guest is going to stay with them for a while, and this guest is going to be very strong, and the only way for her to bring out that strength is if you mention family. But she loses control of that strength, so he told his class to never mention family around her. And Mina and all the dumb, the shippers and the dumb people, and especially Mineta, I'm not expelling Mineta from this one, they ask her, and who is this guest? Aizawa says, I'm trying to adopt her at the moment because her parents have died. So think of her as my daughter. And Mineta immediately started salivating, thinking, oh, she's going to be cute or she's going to be hot. First one, cute, yes. And Aizawa completely ignored Mineta because he knows Mineta's a pervert and he can't stop Mineta. So Aizawa says, come in, Nezuko. And everybody's like, okay, her name is Nezuko. Nezuko walks in and she looks like a 4-year-old. And Aizawa hangs his head and says, Nezuko, please go to your original size for at least a minute or two and introduce yourself. And Nezuko nods and goes to her 12 and a half year old state and goes and says, my name is Nezuko. My quirk's name is Demon Queen. And she goes to the back of the room, shrinks to her 4-year-old state, and pulls out a sleeping bag and basically goes into a cocoon. And Mina squeals at how cute it is. Well, all the girls squeal at how cute it is. And Aizawa flashes his eyes, saying, shut up. No, saying, be quiet. He flashes his eyes very quickly, so everybody knows, don't talk. He says, be quiet, in a normal tone, and everybody's like, why is Aizawa doing this? Then they look at Nezuko, who's shaking just a tiny bit, and then she's starting to slowly calm down. Leo, stop bugging me! My cat Leo's bugging me. God dang it. But she's slowly calming down. I'm like, oh, trauma. And one of the ships, the person who wants this it suggested was Todoroki. I'm sorry, I just can't see Todoroki liking Nezuko because of his brooding Uchiha ways. Sorry, Sasuke reference. I may give him the ability to, yeah, I'm gonna give him a evolution quirk. So one eye is crystal blue and the other eye is crimson red. His right eye is crimson red and his left eye is crimson and crystal blue. His fire currently is just like a lighter's heat, the heat of a lighter. And his ice is like dry ice temperatures. No 0 Kelvin yet, because he will get that sooner or later. The ability to go that low. So, and he still has the right side ice and the left side fire. And Aizawa says, okay, now we're going to do a physical test. And Nezuko immediately gets out of her sleeping bag and walks up to Aizawa, grabs the uh, gym uniform, and walks to the changing room. And he says, you guys stay here. I'll tell you when Nezuko is done. So he walks out there with Nezuko, and they can see her from the um, classroom. Bakugo and Todoroki aren't paying attention. One is Bakugo just doesn't care because he thinks she's just another extra that can't keep up with him. And Todoroki's like, she hasn't been through more pain than me. Blah blah blah. I'm the most scarred out of everybody. So he's still in the brooding Uchiha mindset. And that's when they hear a sonic boom. Todoroki and Bakugo hear a sonic boom from the uh, training area. So they rush to the window and look. And all of a sudden the window breaks in, shatters. And they almost get shot in the eye by glass. But since the glass is special glass that once it cracks, it shatters into dust. So no harm can be done. So all the glass in UA was shattered from that sonic boom. Then they heard a few thousand more sonic booms, and they look back at where Nezuko is supposed to be, and they see a 18-year-old standing there with a horn, looking pissed off. And Aizawa on edge, standing there on edge, and being very respectful. He looks like he's being very respectful and asking this person to do these things. The grip strength, broken. The ball, space. The side to side jumps. Aizawa, after 5 minutes, had to ask her to stop because he was just getting tired of her bouncing back and forth. The run, 0.01 seconds. And then he activated his quirk and she passed out from exhaustion. And he caught her. And when he deactivated his quirk, she shrank down to child Nezuko size. Then he pulled out the sleeping bag that she uses and rolled her up in it. Then he waved his hand because he knew everybody was looking at where Nezuko was. And he signaled to the entire class, come here, we're ready. So when they all got there, everybody was asking Aizawa, what the hell happened to Nezuko? What was that form? And Aizawa goes, that is what happens when you bring up family. The only reason why I can slightly control her is because I know that if she starts to charge at me, I just activate my quirk and she goes into child form and passes out. So they all dumbly nod, okay, we understand, except for Bakugo and Todoroki. Bakugo goes, whatever. Thinking, oh, she's just another obstacle I have to get by. I need to become number one. And Todoroki's thinking, uh, is she the love child of All Might? Is she the secret love child of All Might? That conspiracy theorist that he is. The brooding conspiracy theorist. So they do the tests, and it shows that Mineta is last, and Nezuko is first in everything. And everybody asks, what exactly is Nezuko's quirk? And Aizawa goes, that's not my place to tell. They'll say, what do you mean not your place to tell? Then he tells them the story, or the myth. He says there's a myth that there's demons running around Mount Fuji at night. And they can't show up in sunlight. This is the first time this is the first time that this bloodline of quirks can show the quirk in broad daylight. And he points to Nezuko. And they'll ask, you mean the myth of the Demon King was real? And he goes, no, no, no. The myth of the Demon King is fake. It's just a myth. But the quirked man who looks like a demon when he activates his quirk is real. And everybody's like, okay, that's confusing, but sure, let's go with that. And we skip a few weeks, and Nezuko is officially adopted by Aizawa. So her name is now Nezuko Aizawa. And she still keeps to herself. Unless someone's getting picked on, which then she stops the bullying or fighting. And if she finds them bullying or fighting again, her demon form activates and she gets really mad. And all the teachers have Aizawa now on speed dial to calm Nezuko down. And the only person who's actually been thoroughly whooped by Nezuko is Monoma. He was bullying Hagakure for her quirk being stupid and how the hell did she get in 1A. And Nezuko saw this, so she stopped it by transforming into her demon state for a few seconds and scaring him away at first. And then he started it up again when he thought she wasn't around. So Nezuko sensed that there was ill intent behind someone, and she immediately rushed to that area, saw what was happening, transformed into her demon state, and whooped his ass, essentially. He was so bloodied, he was so beaten and bloodied that it took 3 days of recovery girl constantly healing him for him to actually be back to normal. So Monoma is now terrified of what looks like a 4-year-old. And she still runs around like she was in Demon Slayer with the little Naruto run and looking all happy. But she does have the bamboo stick in her mouth now. And everybody's asking what's that for? And Aizawa says that she has the energy and habits of a 4-year-old. So she's biting everything. And they understand that. Hold on, I'll be back. So she's basically made a family in 1A of Hagakure, Mina, Ochako, Suyu, and Jiro, and also Momo. So she's basically made all the females in 1A, her family, and Kirishima, Kaminari, Ojiro? I think it's Ojiro. All the guys except for Todoroki and Bakugo, too. So it's basically a family. And Aizawa one day comes up to class and says, "You gotta get your parents to sign these." He said it in a really low voice while Nezuko is sleeping, but everybody heard it. And a few times they've accidentally brought up family and parents around Nezuko, and she started crying and getting really angry, and she transformed into her demonic state. And they had to call Aizawa over quickly. Because if she goes on a rampage again, emphasis on again, they can't stop her. So she still does remember the face of the murderer that killed the rest of her family. And by this time, Tanjiro has woken up. But he doesn't remember anything of what happened. So he thinks he's still... So he's asking, where's my dad? Where's my mom? Where's my family? He thinks he's younger when his father was still there. So they had to break the news to Tanjiro that his entire family, except Nezuko, was killed. And Tanjiro, and yes, his quirk is still going to be the breathing style, is just completely crushed. And he's been in the hospital for roughly a month now. So his body has atrophied just a tiny bit. So he needs a little bit of help sitting up. So the doctors say we can get Nezuko in here for you if you want. And he immediately shakes his head, yes. I want my family. And when the doctors called up Aizawa in the middle of class saying Tanjiro's awake, and that was before the doctors asked, do you want the rest of your family? Aizawa says, class is over, and he yells as loud as possible to get her awake, and thinking, he says, Tanjiro, as loud as possible. Nezuko's eyes fly open. She rips out of the sleeping bag and asks, awake or no? And she's currently standing in 18-year-old form, just jumping up and down, thinking he's awake and he's okay. And Aizawa goes, he's awake and he wants you. And she disappears. Absolutely disappears. And her desire to be next to Tanjiro as fast as possible made her quirk evolve. So she can teleport to Tanjiro at any moment. Any of her blood relatives. And I'm stating blood relatives because it's going to be a factor in the future. So, she appears in front of the doctor after the doctor asks, "Do you want to see Nezuko?" And he says, "Yes, I want to be with my family." And then she appears. She hugs him in the 12 and a half year old state and starts crying and saying, "Thank God you're okay. I was worried." And Tanjiro said, "I'm okay, I'm okay. What about everybody else?" And she pulls back and looks down and then whispers just loud enough for Tanjiro to hear, "Nobody else made it." And Tanjiro looks completely crushed to hear the news from his sibling, his sister, and Aizawa. He's still at class, so he calls the phone he gave to Nezuko, and Nezuko picks it up and says, "Yes, Aizawa?" And he goes, "Where are you?" And she goes, "I'm at the hospital." His face pales. Everybody in class sees it, and he runs out of the room as fast as possible, not even bothering getting into a car because he would have to get on the highway and get off the highway, and that's how you get there fastest in car. But when he's on foot, he can jump from rooftop to rooftop. In car, it would take him like 10 minutes to get to UA. By foot, it takes him 5 because he's running as fast as possible. So he gets to the room and he slows down, catches his breath, and walks in and asks Tanjiro, "Do you remember anything?" And Tanjiro says, "No. Last thing I remember," and he explains his entire 7th birthday. And Nezuko's eyes widen, going, "What the heck? He's missed 3 years," because she's still older than him. So she asks Tanjiro, she's still in her adult form, but she asks Tanjiro, how old does he think he is? And he says, 7. And she goes, "No, you're 10. And he goes, "No, my birthday was yesterday, wasn't it?" And she goes, "Yes, your 10th birthday was yesterday. You've been asleep for a month." And she pulls a mirror from the basically nightstand of the room, and she shows him the scar he now has and says, "A month ago, a vigilante and I did that to you." And she starts bawling her eyes out, apologizing that she hurt him. And she shrinks her size to the size of a 4-year-old child, climbs on the bed and starts hugging him and nuzzling him, saying, "Sorry, sorry, sorry, sorry." She's so sorry. And Tanjiro finally remembers because Nezuko acted like one of the other family members he had of the very apologetic nature whenever they did something minuscule. So he remembers the last 3 years of his life up until Nezuko attacked him. So he pats her head and says, "It's okay, I remember now." So he hugs her. She passes out. She's still in 4-year-old form. And Aizawa says, "I have a deal for you. I can help you with your rehabilitation so it goes faster. And you can be with Nezuko all day." And his eyes widen brightly and says, "I'll take it, whatever it is." And he goes, "Okay, you'll have to become you'll have to become my son." Because he was about to say family, but he stopped himself. So he's like, "Sure, I'll do it." So Aizawa gets the adoption papers ready and adopts Tanjiro. So it's Tanjiro Aizawa. I still can't say their last name. It escapes me. And a week later, after a little bit of rehabilitation, so Tanjiro knows how to walk again, he goes to UA. And this time Nezuko does not have her sleeping bag. She now sits at a new desk that is connected to a different desk. And she's in her 18-year-old form, just bouncing up and down, all excited. And everybody walks in, sees her in her adult form, and flinches. Then they look closer and sees that the demon horn is gone. And then she realizes, oh, everybody's used to seeing me at my 4-year-old form. I better change to that until he gets here. So she goes down into her 4-year-old form and crawls in her sleeping bag and starts to sleep. Once Aizawa says, "Okay, you problem children, be quiet." She wakes up, she gets out of her sleeping bag, and transforms into her 8-year-old form. By this time, all of her clothes are made out of her own hair, so all of her clothes change size with her. So she's in her 18-year-old form, and everybody sees her shifting and pays attention to the right side of her head, right side of her forehead, and sees no horn. And they're completely just confused because they've never seen her like this. And she's happy. Normally she's the, "Oh, I'm sad, I'm little child, so I don't feel sadness. And I'm happy at if anything happens that will make a normal child happy." So so Aizawa says, "We have another student that's even younger than Nezuko and is part of," and he quotes And he says this, and everybody he immediately flinches when he says part of her family. Because normally she doesn't say family, she says household. When she refers to a group, she calls it a household. So when Aizawa said family, everybody flinched and immediately turned to Nezuko and saw that she just got even happier. And then he said, okay, you can come in, Tanjiro, and everybody put it together that what happened a week ago is now showing its face of her original family. So everybody was just anticipating this, like, 6-year-old child walking in. But when they saw a 10-year-old walk in, they're like, what? And Aizawa says, can you please introduce yourself? And Tanjiro goes, I'm Tanjiro Aizawa. My quirk is water breathing and sun breathing. Water breathing, fire breath, and sun breathing. And they look at him funny. So he walks over to the desk with Nezuko in it and sits down next to her. And then they start a study session. And Aizawa says, okay, on to the lesson. Because Nezuko is a quick learner, and Tanjiro learns faster near Nezuko than when he was at the hospital. So Nezuko agreed to teach/tutor Tanjiro up to the high school level. So when he finally understands everything up to high school level, he starts paying attention to Aizawa's lessons and asking questions. And when he finally gets into class one day, he walks up to Aizawa, who is still sneaking in and out of class before class even happens. Nezuko's gotten used to it. Tanjiro's just curious of why, and he goes up to Aizawa and asks, why do you keep sneaking in and out in class? And Aizawa goes, you've noticed too? You and your sister are really good. And Tanjiro smiles and says, yeah, we are. But I have a question for you. And Aizawa goes, shoot. And Tanjiro says, what does it mean to be a true hero? And Aizawa is like, huh, good question. Let me think about this. And I'm going to leave it off there. That is also a question for you guys to answer. What does it mean to be a true hero? Not just to be a hero. To be a hero is to save people. And to save enough people to where you get recognition as a hero. That's what it means to be a hero. But what does it mean to be a true hero? I have a question. That's the question for this video. I'm going to be leaving a question at the end of each new video. But this is part 0 of what if Nezuko was in My Hero. And I went a little further than I wanted, but I feel like it's going to be a really good roller coaster. So, see you guys in the next video. I'm sorry, I'll never do that again. Jacksepticeye. Well, see you guys in the next video. Bye!